This first video is called Why I Choose the King James Bible. First, I'm going to start off with a little history about the Bible, and specifically the King James. The followers of John Wycliffe undertook the first complete English translations of the Christian scriptures in the 14th century. In about 1525, William Tyndale, an English contemporary of Martin Luther, undertook a translation of the New Testament. Tyndale's translation was the first printed Bible in English. In Europe, the first generations of Calvinists had produced the Geneva Bible of 1560 from the original Hebrew and Greek scriptures, which was very influential in the writing of the Authorized King James Version. The KJV was the third Bible translation into English that was approved by churches, the first being the Great Bible in 1535, and the second was the Bishop's Bible in 1568. Now a little bit about the King James Version itself. So the King James Version, also called the KJV, it's also called the KJB for King James Bible, or simply the Authorized Version. It is an English translation of the Christian Bible for the Church of England. The translation began in 1604 and was completed and published in 1611 under the sponsorship of King James I. The books of the King James Version include the 39 books of the Old Testament. It also has a section between the two testaments called the Apocrypha, and then the 27 books of the New Testament. The first printing used a black letter typeface instead of a Roman typeface, and I guess this was some sort of political statement against the Church of Rome. Specifically the Apocrypha, many people don't consider that the Word of God, and that was taken from the Latin Vulgate and the Greek Septuagint, but Martin Luther himself says it's beneficial to read, but not the Word of God. The translation itself was done by 47 scholars, all of whom were members of the Church of England. The New Testament was translated from Greek, the Old Testament from Hebrew and Aramaic, and the Apocrypha from Greek and Latin. This book is the most widely printed book in history. Most of the printed books are actually the standard text of 1769, which was re-edited by Benjamin Blayney at Oxford, and it almost always omits the apocryphal books. During the translation, the Bishop of London told the translators that he didn't want any marginal notes included in the Bible. There are many words that are added to the translation to help understand, help complete the meaning of the original Greek, and Hebrew, so these words were put in a different typeface, usually italic in the newer versions. The scholars, all the different translators, worked in 6 different committees. They were at the University of Oxford, University of Cambridge, and Westminster. They translated individual books. Each of the 6 groups would translate a few books. And then the committees would work separately on those, and then all the drafts were brought together, and they were compared and revised, and they were harmonized with each other to make them flow together better. The original printing of the Authorized Version was published by Robert Parker, the King's printer, in 1611 as a complete folio Bible. It was sold loose leaf for 10 shillings or bound for 12. I just add this to wonder how much it would sell for now. One of the original versions probably in the millions of dollars. The original printing contained two prefatory texts. The first was an epistle in dedication to King James. The second preface was called The Translators to the Reader. And this second part is a long and learned essay that defends the undertaking of the new version. And one of the quotes from it says that they never saw it from the beginning that they need to make a new translation nor make of a bad translation a good one, but they want to make a good one better out of many good ones, a principal good one, not just to be accepted against, that hath been our endeavor, that our mark. That was a quote from the preface. The first printing contained a number of other sections before the Word of God. Include a table for reading the Psalms at morning and evening song, and a calendar, an almanac, a table of holy days. The 1769 Oxford edition is the most common one we're used to seeing now. It was edited by Benjamin Blaney. It reproduced everything almost unchanged, but they sought to remove elements out of the 1611 that were due to the vagaries of different printers, while incorporating most of the revised readings of the Cambridge editions of 1629 and 1638. They undertook the huge task of standardizing the whole variation of punctuation and spelling out of the original, making many thousands of minor changes to the text. They also revised and greatly extended the italicizing of the words that were not in the original languages, but that added clarity to the text. A comment about the Old Testament: it says the Authorized version is closer to the Hebrew tradition than any other previous English translation, especially in making use of the rabbinic commentaries such as Kimhi in elucidating obscure passages in the Masoretic text. Earlier versions had been more likely to adopt the Septuagint or Vulgate in such places. For their New Testament, the translators chiefly used the 1598 and other Greek editions of Theodore Beza. The Authorized translators appear to follow the earlier 1550 Greek Textus Receptus of Stephanus as well. The source Greek texts of the New Testament used for the production of the Protestant Bible versions depended mainly on manuscripts of the later Byzantine text type, and with minor variations contain what became known as the Textus Receptus. A number of Bible verses in the King James Version of the New Testament are not found in more recent Bible translations, and these other translations are based on modern critical texts. So, talking about the influence of the King James, we find that the Bible is, by the King James, is by most people considered the most accurate English translation, and I concur with that. I also believe that the Bible is the Word of God, that it clearly wasn't written by men. There's a lot of great quotes on the Bible that are in this video, and a couple more quotes from people through the ages about the translation. Specifically, it's noted for its majesty of style and has been described as one of the most important books in English culture and a driving force in the shaping of the English-speaking world by the 19th century. F.W. Faber said it lives on the ear like music that can never be forgotten, like the sound of church bells, which the convert hardly knows he can forgo. The Authorized version has been called the most influential version, the most influential book in the world. And what is the most influential language in the world? The most important book in English religion and culture. The most celebrated book in the English-speaking world. Even atheist figures such as Richard Dawkins have praised the King James as being a giant step in maturing of the English literature. And he also is quoted as saying, a native speaker of English who has never read a word of the King James Bible is verging on the barbarian. I believe that the Bible contains no errors, and that the King James Version is, like I said earlier, the most accurate of all the translations. And this version has been translated into hundreds of languages. So all these are reasons I choose to use the King James versions in my further Bible commentary. Thank you.